everyone, this is Sharon. I'm here with my friend Vandana Sheth. Hi Vandana, how are you doing?
I am great, Sharon. Great to be on your podcast, on your show.
It's so great to have you. Vandana is a dietitian, she's a media expert, she's a plant-based nutrition expert, and I'm really excited that she's joining us today because we're talking about one of my favorite things, and that's about how to eat healthy, delicious Indian food within a plant-based diet. So she's going to be giving us all of her personal tips, some of her favorite recipes, and I just can't wait to get into this. So Vandana, can you tell us a little bit about, your personal journey as a dietitian, a little bit about your book, and, about your own personal nutrition philosophy?
Sure. So I was born and raised in India, and growing up in Madras, which is now called Chennai, it's on the southeast part of India. I was raised completely vegetarian. My family is originally from the northwestern state of Gujarat. And what people often don't realize that India is a country with huge diversity in terms of food. There's nothing called an Indian way of eating. It's not just one diet, kind of like the Mediterranean. There are so many little nuances within each state. But I was raised on a vegetarian diet with lots of beans and lentils and whole grains, fresh fruits and vegetables, and of course, spices. So that's really how I grew up eating. And when I moved to America, I continued to enjoy using those foods, but modifying them to add some Asian inspired food, Thai food, Italian food, but it's all vegetarian.
It sounds so delicious the way you're describing it. And, that really leads me to my next question is, what are some of those really key ingredients that are parts of that food culture that you're talking about? Or certain spices or things that you always have in your pantry?
Yes. And so, as I said, again, it differs. Different states have different ingredients that they highlight. But in general, most Indian kitchens would have a variety of beans and lentils. So, my pantry, I have at least 5 to 10 beans, at least 10 to 15 varieties of split lentils, and they're called dals. And in the north, it's more wheat based. So, they use a lot of whole wheat flour for their flatbreads like roti or chapati. In the south, it's mainly rice. So it's white rice or red rice. And those are the two grain choices. Spices, again, it varies vastly, but in general, most homes, or in my kitchen for sure, you would find cumin, you would find mustard seeds, you would find turmeric, fenugreek, you would find cloves, cinnamon, a lot of aromatics, ginger, garlic, cilantro. Those are just a few top of my head.
Wow, it sounds so great. So what are some of those legumes? You talked about the different kinds of lentils and split pea type things. What are the other types of legumes that you would have?
So garbanzo beans, it's known as chana, that's popular. Kidney beans, known as rajma. Then we have mung beans, the whole green mung beans. And then we have it's a black husked white lentil. It's called urad. That's something that we use. And then there's, of course, what we think of as lentils here, the French green lentils. But then when you split it, you also have the red lentils. And many of these are split up. So the mung beans are split up, and you can have yellow colored mung dal, which is the split lentil. So again, there's just so many. So if someone is curious and interested, highly encourage a visit to an Indian grocery store. You'll be amazed at how many choices there are.
I have one in my neighborhood I love to go to. But a lot of those things you can find in just any supermarket as well, right?
Exactly. It's gotten so easy to get many of these ingredients. I love walking through my regular grocery stores and finding garam masala or finding these lentils and grains in just the basic aisles.
Right. So what are some of the classic dishes that are plant-based, vegetarian or vegan that are in, the food culture that you just really love to highlight?
Yeah, so I love anything with beans. So when we think about foods, most of us have a story that's connected to our food. It's not just nourishment, right? So for me, what I love is rajma and rice. That was a classic lunch combination at my school lunch. So I love that. It's kidney beans in an onion gravy, onion tomato gravy, and it's served with rice, and it's a phenomenal combination. Or I love cauliflower. So there's a combination of cauliflower and potato that's very popular called aloo gobi. And it goes really well. Yeah, it goes really well with a flatbread called roti or chapati. Um, I also like khichdi, which is rice and split green lentils among beans. And it's the ideal comfort food. So in India, traditionally, if your stomach is upset or you're feeling under the weather, or even as the first food for a child, sometimes it's khichdi. I think of it as a warm hug in a bowl. It's so comforting. It's got turmeric, some cumin, just very luscious. And you add a little ghee or coconut oil into it and some spices, aromatics. It's just as flavorful. I also like rasam, which is a spicy tomato broth. And that's really what I grew up having if you were feeling under the weather or you're sick. That was my mom's version of a chicken soup, I guess. It's completely vegan, vegetarian. It's got a lot of spices, clears up the sinuses, and it's just so tasty.
Wow, all those things sound so good. You're making me hungry. So, a lot of us know about Indian food from eating out, and it's, such a popular global cuisine. I love to eat at my favorite Indian restaurant in my neighborhood. But are there certain nutrition pitfalls that you think, you try to recommend that people be aware of?
Sure. So, the reason I actually wrote this book is because when I first came here in the early 90s, I noticed that there was a huge gap between what I grew up eating in India as Indian food and what was served in restaurants here. And so, some things to keep in mind are often foods served in restaurants are overcooked vegetables. So, you're losing a lot of the nutrients there, like overcooked. Second, it's also loaded with oils and fats, so it's much higher in calories than it would be if you made it at home.
Mm-hmm.
Third, often you're served refined grains rather than the whole wheat flour that's used at home. The rice served is usually basmati rice, which is a delicious aromatic rice. But if you're making it at home, maybe you could swap it out for some brown basmati rice so you get a little bit more of the whole grain component. So those are some key things I would watch out for.
I know I do that at home. I use the brown basmati rice, and I can find that at my neighborhood supermarket.
Right.
And
And
those are really good, and there are really good reasons why people could try cooking at home, right?
absolutely. I think what holds people back from cooking Indian food at home is potentially being overwhelmed with how many ingredients they might need for one recipe. So that's a key concern. And the second concern is not knowing how to use these spices. So that's, again, another reason why I wrote this book, to really streamline the process. You don't need to invest in 20 or 30 ingredients for a recipe. Just buy a few basic ingredients and that'll work itself into all the recipes in the book. Take shortcuts, use canned beans, use prepped vegetables in the grocery store in the frozen section, use tomato sauce or tomato cans. It's okay to take those shortcuts and still amp up the flavor and nutrition.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about other cooking tips, because I agree with you. I think people are intimidated and they think, oh, there's no way, I don't have all the right ingredients, or I just don't know how to do this cooking style. So if you could kind of lead us through, your, basic tips on how to approach that cooking style.
Sure. So the first thing is, of course, like anything else, I would suggest that make sure you look through a recipe completely before you sit down to make it. Look at the ingredients that you need, have everything chopped, prepped, ready to go, because once you start cooking, it goes by really fast. And like I said, you could use canned, pre-cooked beans or lentils to speed up that process. One of my favorite cooking utensil or dish at home is my pressure cooker. Every Indian home has at least one, if not more, pressure cookers. And now with the Instant Pot being so popular here, that's another way to get that in. But if you don't have the time to use those, just go ahead and buy the canned or frozen beans or lentils, and you can use them. You can also chop up your vegetables over the weekend, or you can buy the prepped vegetables. You can make your spice mix ahead of time. That way you can use different beans, different days of the week, so it's not the exact same flavor. And play around, be creative. Recipes are just guidelines. They don't need to be followed precisely. If you don't have an exact ingredient, it's not going to ruin a recipe. Most Indian recipes have a few different ingredients, so one off is not going to make or break that recipe.
Yeah, that's really great. What about equipment? I mean, you talked about the Instant Pot, and I have one of those. I use it for some of my favorite Indian recipes. But are there other things that, I think sometimes people think they have to have all this special equipment. Is there anything else that you just use consistently, or maybe people already have in their homes?
Right. So besides the pressure cooker or Instant Pot, I would say most other ingredients you would have at home. So you want to have a good knife, you want to have a good peeler. And I think the one thing I like to use every day almost is my spice grinder. It's basically a coffee grinder that I set aside just for my whole spices, because when you roast and crush up fresh spices, the aroma and just the flavor profile is so much deeper than if you bought a store-bought spice mix. So I like to use that. Otherwise, I would say if you are into this kind of cooking, something like an Indian spice container called a masala dabba, I think is really fun. So I have mine here to show you. I'm not sure I can tilt it, but you can sort of see it.
Oh,
And,
perfect.
and so every home, again, in North India at least, has something like this. So I have a few different containers like this. So these are spices I use on a daily basis. So I have turmeric, I have a combination of cumin and coriander, this beige colored one. I have red chili. I have fenugreek seeds. Right here I have cumin seeds. And then I have a couple of different lentils. And in South Indian cooking, you use actually these beans to add a little crunch when you finish up a dish on top. You drizzle it on top and it just adds a little extra crunch and toasty notes.
So beautiful and colorful. I think it's one of my favorite things about the Indian food cuisine. It's just so aromatic and delicious and all those beautiful colors. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Of
So
course.
you grind your spices and toast them before you cook almost on a daily basis. Is that a tradition for you?
I like to, especially if it's a special dish, if it's something that I really want to amp up the flavor, not necessarily all the ingredients, but if I'm making something that needs cumin, you could just dry roast some cumin seeds, either in a pan on the stove or put it on a baking sheet in the oven, just till it gets a little crunchy, and then crush it. And that aroma is just so amazing. You will notice a difference between that and a pre-bought cumin powder.
Wow. Now you're inspiring me to do that.
Try it. Let me know how it works.
So what are some of your favorite dishes? I know you talked about some of the classic foods, but what are your favorites? Maybe some from your book even.
Yeah, so it's like asking which one is my favorite baby. I have so many. But I would say the curried powerball, which I came up with. It's not really a traditional recipe. I just pulled together a few of my favorite ingredients, and it came about one warm summer day. I got home from work. It was a day we wanted to just sit down in the backyard, relax, enjoy the ambiance. So I pulled a few ingredients from the kitchen, went out to the backyard and made this in our backyard stove. It's a one bowl meal. It has cauliflower, garbanzo beans, spices, and you can serve it either over a bed of greens or with some kind of quinoa or brown rice, and you have a complete meal in one bowl. And so that's an easy recipe.
So you could do that for meal prep too, couldn't you?
Exactly. Make that together and then you can mix and match different combinations for the week. Another favorite recipe would be chai, because it's a delicious, easy pick-me-up. So traditional Indian chai is made with spices, milk, and tea. You could use you could use dairy or dairy alternative, any beverage works. And I've gotten a chai masala recipe in the book, so you can have your own spice mix that you can put in there. I have a slow processed one, and I also have an instant one, so you just mix different powders and you have your mix ready to go. I also have a turmeric milk latte. So as we're getting into the fall, often we think about pumpkin spice latte, but I encourage you to give turmeric milk latte a try, because it has some of those aromatics and it's actually really good for our overall health, decrease our risk for cold and coughs. So that would be a fun one to try.
Yes, thank you for sharing that recipe last week when I got a cold.
Yes, happy to.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So did you have that recipe as a child? Is that something traditional that you would have had that your mother might have prepared for you?
Yes, and so here's the deal. So growing up, I actually didn't like turmeric milk, because the traditional way of making it was literally just milk heated up with some turmeric in it. It was
Mhm.
bitter and there was ghee floating on there. It was something that I avoided at all costs. But as I got into nutrition, learning about the benefits, I was sort of on a mission to make it more flavorful. And I am thrilled with the recipe that I have in the book because now I actually look forward to drinking it, even if I'm not sick.
Right. It's very comforting and makes you feel so good. I have, I love to make that recipe as well. So I
So
appreciate you sharing that with us. So, thank you so much for talking with us about one of our favorite subjects, eating more delicious, healthy Indian food as part of a plant-based diet as well. And we're going to be sharing Vandana's favorite recipe for this curried power bowl. It's a curried power bowl, right? Wasn't that what it
yes, yes. And here's how my book looks.
was? Yes, right on
And
the cover
the
there,
cover
right?
picture right there, that's the curried Powerball. So hopefully your listeners, readers, viewers will enjoy it.
Yes, I'm going to share the recipe on the blog. So please make sure you check out the blog that goes with this interview. It's at sharonpalmer.com or theplantpowereddietitian.com. I'm going to share information about Vandana's book and any resources that she'd like to share as well. So make sure you check it out. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just can't wait to cook up all these delicious recipes you have.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yes. So I just want to thank you for joining us today and check out the blog. This has been Sharon reminding you to live and eat well.